He thought it would be easy. One reckless move, one shirt torn, and a room full of men ready to laugh at her. But then, her tattoo was revealed. And in that instant, the bar froze. Breaths stopped. Hearts pounded. What they saw on her skin wasn't just ink. It was a story of blood, legacy, and strength that no one could break. What happened next would change everything in ways no one expected, and leave even the toughest men shaken to their core. Watch closely, because this is the moment where courage meets truth, and no one in that bar would ever forget her. The night was thick with the smell of sweat, beer, and smoke. Neon lights flickered outside the bar, and inside, laughter turned to shouts as leather jackets brushed against wooden stools. It wasn't the kind of place families visited. It was the kind of place where men settled debts with fists and women walked in with hard eyes because softness didn't last here. That night, the door swung open, and a woman walked in. She was alone. She was black, her hair tied back, her steps steady. She didn't belong here, and everyone knew it the moment she crossed the threshold. Conversations quieted, but only for a breath. Then the noise picked up again, louder than before, as if to test her courage. She didn't flinch. She moved to the counter, asked for a drink, and set her hands flat on the bar top like she owned the space. The bartender's eyes flickered with something, respect, maybe fear, but he poured her a glass anyway. In the corner sat a group of bikers, big men with tattoos on their necks, scars across their knuckles, and laughter that always sounded like cruelty. One of them, heavier than the rest, with a beard tangled like wire, noticed her. His eyes narrowed, then curved with mockery. He stood, the scrape of his chair sharp against the floor, and walked toward her with the kind of swagger that wasn't confidence, but a challenge. "Wrong place, sweetheart," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. His buddies laughed behind him. The woman didn't answer. She lifted her glass and drank slowly, her silence cutting sharper than any reply. That only angered him more. He leaned in, his voice dropping low, but his words dripping with venom. "You think you're too good to answer me? You think you belong here?" The bar's noise dimmed. Eyes turned. Boots shifted on wooden floors. Everyone was waiting. The woman finally lowered her glass. Her gaze met his, calm, steady, unshaken. And that calm burned him worse than any insult. His pride couldn't handle it. His voice rose, trembling with fury. "Don't ignore me!" Then, in a flash of rage, he grabbed her shirt. The fabric tore under his fist, the sound echoing through the silence that had swallowed the bar. Gasps broke out. A cruel grin spread across his face as he thought he had humiliated her. But then, the moment the torn fabric revealed what was, inked on her skin, everything stopped. There, etched across her shoulder and running down her arm, was a tattoo unlike any they had seen. It wasn't just ink. It was a story carved in lines and symbols, bold and haunting. A face, a name, a symbol of honor that carried weight. The biker's grin faltered. His hand froze mid-air. Around the bar, jaws dropped, eyes widened. The laughter died instantly. The room was filled with something heavier than shock. It was recognition. One man at the back whispered, barely audible, "No, it can't be." Another cursed under his breath, stepping backward as though the sight burned. Him. The bartender's hand trembled, glass slipping from his fingers and shattering against the floor. The biker's grip loosened. He stared at the tattoo as if it had ripped open the ground beneath his boots. He took a step back, his lips parted, but no words came out. His friends, who had moments ago laughed the loudest, now sat stiff, their faces pale. The woman didn't speak. She didn't need to. The tattoo spoke for her. It told of battles fought, of pain endured, of something bigger than every man in that room. It was the kind of mark no ordinary person carried. It was tied to history, to a past that none of them dared to confront. Her shirt hung torn, but her dignity stood taller than every shadow in the room. Her eyes swept the bar, steady, unafraid. No one moved. No one breathed. The silence stretched like a noose tightening around every throat. The biker who had touched her stumbled back another step. His arrogance melted, his face now twisted with something he had never shown before: fear. He had wanted to break her, to make her small in front of everyone. Instead, he had unleashed a truth none of them could handle. The woman lifted her glass again, slow and deliberate. She drank, her movements unshaken, as though nothing had happened. Yet everything had. The bar was frozen in place, trapped in, the weight of the revelation carved into her skin. No one laughed now, no one jeered. Even the jukebox in the corner seemed too afraid to keep playing. The air was thick, pressing against every chest. They all wanted to know the story behind that tattoo, but no one dared to ask. Not yet. The biker lowered his hand, fingers trembling. He glanced at his friends for strength, but none met his eye. Their bravado had vanished. They stared at the tattoo as if it carried ghosts, as if it spoke of sins they could never wash away. The woman set her glass down with a quiet thud that cut through the silence. Her voice finally came, low but strong, carrying across the room like a command. Now, do you still think I don't belong here? The question wasn't just for him. It was for every single person in the bar, and none had an answer. The biker's jaw clenched, but his body betrayed him. He stepped back again, as though her gaze alone forced him to retreat. The woman didn't move, didn't chase. She didn't need to. Power had shifted, and everyone knew it. Her tattoo wasn't just ink. It was a weapon sharper than a blade, heavier than a fist. It carried history, pain, blood, and survival. It told them she wasn't a victim. She was something they couldn't touch, couldn't break, couldn't own. And in that moment, the entire bar, men who thought they feared nothing, sat in silence, their breaths stolen, their courage stripped. All because one woman stood her ground, and one tattoo told a story louder than screams. The air didn't loosen. It grew heavier. The bartender's hand shook as he reached for a rag to sweep broken glass, but even that small sound echoed too, loud. No one wanted to break the silence, not even with a cough, not even with a sigh. The biker who had torn her shirt clenched and unclenched his fists, searching for the swagger that had always carried him. But it was gone. He felt stripped, bare, more humiliated than the woman he had tried to shame. Her gaze didn't leave him, calm, sharp, piercing through him like a blade. And though she stood alone, without a single ally in the bar, she had made every man there feel smaller. Then, from the back corner, an old man rose. He wasn't a biker. He wasn't dressed for trouble. His hat was frayed, his boots worn, his back bent with age. Yet when he stepped forward, the crowd parted for him. Their eyes avoided his, not out of respect, but out of unease. He moved slowly, carefully, his eyes locked on the tattoo carved into the woman's shoulder. When he spoke, his voice trembled, but not from weakness, from memory. I know that mark. The words cracked the silence like thunder. All eyes swung to him. The woman didn't flinch. She waited. The old man's voice grew stronger. That symbol, it belonged to a unit, a brotherhood, not a gang, not a club, warriors, the kind of people you never mocked, never crossed. His hands shook as he pointed. That tattoo isn't decoration, it's legacy, and it means she carries bloodlines that could bury you all. A murmur ran through the bar, low and fearful. Some bikers looked down at the floor, others shifted, uncomfortably. The big man who had torn her shirt took a step back, then another. His mouth opened as if to deny it, but no sound came. The woman finally spoke, her voice even, almost too calm. "You're right. This isn't just ink. It was earned." She let the silence stretch, then continued, her words cutting deep. "That mark belonged to my father, a man who bled on foreign soil, who fought wars you'll never understand. He carried it not for glory, but for survival. And when he passed, I had it inked into my skin, to carry him with me, to remind the world I wasn't born to bow to men who think breaking fabric breaks spirit." The old man lowered his head, his lips pressing tight as though to keep his own emotions from spilling. But the room felt it, the weight of her words, pressing into every chest. The biker who had torn her shirt muttered under his breath, forcing a smirk he couldn't hold. "Doesn't change a thing. You walk into our place, you pay the price." But his words fell flat. Even his own friends didn't echo his bravado. Their eyes shifted nervously between the tattoo and her face. They weren't laughing anymore. They weren't sneering. They were waiting, uncertain, as though the ground they stood on had grown, too thin to trust. The woman's eyes narrowed, but her voice remained steady. "No. The price is yours, for thinking fear is power, for believing shame makes you strong. You tore my shirt, but you revealed your weakness to everyone in this room." The big man's jaw tightened, but his fists didn't rise. He couldn't. Not now. Not with those eyes burning into him. Not with that mark staring back at him. His strength was gone. The bartender finally spoke, his voice hushed. "She's right." He swallowed hard, his hand still gripping the rag. "I knew a man with that tattoo long ago. He was the kind of man even the worst of us respected. If she carries his mark, you don't touch her. None of you do." The biker's friends shifted uncomfortably, their shoulders shrinking. One of them muttered, "He's right. Leave it. Just leave it." The big man's pride burned like fire, but it was a flame that had nowhere to spread. He looked around and saw no allies. The room that once cheered his every move now turned cold. His laughter, his cruelty, his dominance, it meant nothing against the weight of that tattoo. The woman reached for her torn shirt, pulling the fabric together as best she could. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She stood taller than anyone in that room. Then she said, low and deliberate, "You wanted to strip me down. Instead, you stripped yourselves. The world saw who you really are." Her words cut deeper than any blade. The biker stepped back one more time, then turned sharply, storming toward his table. His boots hit the floor heavy, but each step sounded hollow. He sat, his face burning, his pride shattered. His friends avoided his eyes, but the bar wasn't finished. The old man, still standing, turned to the woman. His eyes softened, but his voice carried weight. "Daughter," he said gently, "you've reminded them of something they forgot. That strength doesn't come from fists. It comes from the scars we carry, the legacies we refuse to bury." The woman's gaze lingered on him, and for the first time her calm cracked just slightly. A flicker of sorrow crossed her face. She nodded once, a silent acknowledgement, then turned back to the room. No one met her eye. Not a single man dared. The air was thick, suffocating with shame and fear. She lifted her glass once more, finishing the last drop. The sound of it hitting. The counter was louder than the jukebox, louder than footsteps, louder than any words could be. And then she said, "Remember this moment. The next time you think tearing someone down makes you strong, remember the silence that followed. Remember how a tattoo stopped you all." The room stayed frozen. The biker's hand shook where it rested on the table. Sweat beaded his forehead. He knew this night would follow him, would haunt him, because his strength had collapsed under the weight of her truth. The woman turned toward the door, her torn shirt still clinging, her tattoo still burning in every man's memory. She walked steady, unhurried, and with each step, the bar seemed to shrink smaller behind her. As the door swung open, the cold night air rushed in. She stepped out without a backward glance, but inside, the silence remained. No one moved. No one spoke. They sat trapped, knowing they had witnessed something they couldn't forget. And the biker who thought he ruled the room knew, deep in his chest, that he would never escape the shame of that night. The door closed behind her, and the night swallowed her steps. Inside, the bar sat motionless, as if the air itself feared to move. The biker who had torn her shirt stared into his drink, but the glass trembled in his hand. His laughter, his bravado, his pride shattered. He could still see the tattoo burned into his mind, a mark that had stripped him bare before everyone. The old man sank slowly back into his chair, but his eyes stayed heavy, his chest rising with the weight of memory. Finally, he spoke, low, more to himself than anyone else. That mark belonged to a man I knew in war. He fought beside me when the sky rained fire. He saved lives when hope was gone. He carried us through hell, and he never once bent his knee to fear. If she carries his tattoo, then she carries his blood. The room grew colder. The bikers who had once filled it with noise sat in silence, faces pale. The truth had sunk deeper than they wanted to admit. They hadn't just humiliated a woman. They had torn into the legacy of a warrior who had once stood taller than all of them combined. The bartender leaned against the counter, shaking his head slowly. That man, I remember his name whispered even here. Some said he was unstoppable. Some said he walked through fire and came out unburned, and now she carries him. His voice cracked. She carries him. The biker at the table slammed his glass down, but it wasn't anger that shook his hands. It was shame. His friends didn't cheer. They didn't rally. They avoided him like he carried a sickness. For the first time, he realized the truth. He had lost more than a fight. He had lost respect. Outside, the woman walked through the night air, her torn shirt brushing against her skin. She didn't hurry. Her steps were measured, strong, steady. Each stride carried her father's legacy. Each breath spoke of survival. Each glance forward proved she had walked through storms greater than this and had never broken. The tattoo on her shoulder glistened faintly under the neon lights spilling from the bar window. It wasn't just ink. It was bloodline. It was history. It was a shield carved into her skin. It told anyone who looked that she wasn't a victim, wasn't prey. She was a warrior's daughter, and no hand could strip that from her. Behind her, the bar remained in silence. The men who had thought themselves fearless had learned fear that night, not the fear of fists, but the fear of truth. They had tried to tear her down, and instead she had left them crushed beneath the weight of their own weakness. The old man finally whispered, his words trembling into the stillness. Her father stood unbroken, and so does she. The words hung in the room like scripture. No one answered, no one dared, because they all knew it was true. And outside, walking away into the night, the woman carried not just a scar, not just a story, but a living reminder. Some legacies can never be torn. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to feel inspired today. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that will touch your heart, awaken your courage, and leave you speechless. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of these unforgettable stories. Thank you for watching, and remember, every story has the power to change a life, maybe even yours.